Today we're going to be taking notes on section 1.9b. So go ahead and label that. My marker will work here. No, it worked too much. All right, so we're on 1.9b. Again, put the date here as usual. And today our task is going to be how do I factor? We're going to be factoring for quite some time here. And we're factoring, I'm going to put this down here, ax squared plus bx plus c. And remember the a, the b, and the c are numbers of some sort. And today we're still going to be keeping that a1. What that means is you won't see a number here. It's going to look like x squared plus bx plus c, which makes it a lot easier. But we're going to keep that a equal to 1. But now, yesterday we ended always in a positive. Today, we are going to end when c is negative. So in a book, it might say c less than 0. So I'm going to pause and let you write that down. We're going to be factoring. And so what it's going to look like if I say when a is 1 and c is negative is it's going to look like x squared. Then there'll be some number in front of x. And then the c might end up being negative sometimes today, whereas in the last section, it was always positive. So this one is going to be kind of like all the ones you get in this section, and we'll come back to that red one in just a moment. Before we do, so let's put like, and then we're going to put over here. We're going to wait to do that one. We'll do it in just a moment. I want to review how we factor when that last term is a positive. So we're going to take a minute and go x squared plus 12x plus 20. We're going to factor that one. And we're going to factor x squared minus 20x plus 36. So we're going to review, first of all, how we factored when that c, or that last term, was positive, so that we can see what happens when we make it a negative. So remember, really what we're doing is unfoiling. And when I lead it in an x squared, it makes my work on the front end really easy because I can only lead with x and x. There's only x times x gives you x squared. So my work really came off the back end of this, figuring out what my last terms can be, because remember this comes from firsts, last, and this is O and I combined together. So I'm really looking for what multiplies to equal a 20, while at the same time combines or adds up to give me the 12. And 4 and 5 comes to mind, but those add up to 9, so that's out. And 10 and 2 comes to mind, and those add up to 12, so I know I'm going to choose 10 and 2. Furthermore, because this is positive, I know they're either both positive or both negative. How do I decide which pair? Well, I go to that middle term. Mine need to add up to positive 12, so I choose 2 positives. So notice all my work is done on the last term, and it's this middle term that determines what my correct pair is and what the correct signs are. So one more from yesterday, and then we'll mess it up a little bit. So again, I have no work to do off the front end of this. It's just going to be x and x. That's the only way I can get those first terms to multiply to equal x squared. But on the back side of this, there's lots of ways to get 36. The first one that comes to mind is 6 times 6. But there's no way to get a 20 out of those, so I will take that one out of the running right away. What else makes a 36? 12 times 3. That doesn't give it to me either. And I keep thinking of things that make a 36. Now, when there's a number at the end there that has a lot of factors, sometimes it's easiest to build up to them. Like say 1 times 36. Does 2 go in there? Yes, it's even. And if I divide it by 2, I get 18. Does 3 go in there? Yes, it goes in 12 times. Does 4 go in there? Yes, it goes in 9 times. Does 5 go in there? No. Does 6 go in there? Yes. And you'll notice if I build them up from 1 to 2 to 3, I'll have all the factors listed. And then I'm looking for the pair that when I combine them, I get that 20. No, 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 no. I know my winning pair is 18 and 2. But in this case, I need to have a negative times a negative giving me that positive 36 because they need to add up to a negative 20. So it's a minus and a minus. Remember, and go ahead and write this down here, you can check by foiling. So let's do that. First, outside, inside, lasts. And these combine to give me a minus 20. And you'll notice that I must have factored it correctly. So those are the kind that we did in the previous section. And the reason I'm spending so much time on them is because my process will not change today. I'll show you what will. So you might need to go to the back of your note sheet, or always feel free to pause and go grab another one if you need it. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to do this one. I am going to still lead in just an x squared, so no work figuring out what to lead with. There's only one way to get an x squared, and that's still just x times x. However, on the last term here, I'm ending in a negative. What that means is I can't end in two positives because a positive times a positive is a positive. I can't end in two negatives because a negative times a negative is a positive. So what that tells me is I need to have one of each sign because that's the only way I can multiply two numbers and get a negative is if one of them's positive and one of them's negative. So I'm going to sort that right here. Now I approach it the exact same way. I need to multiply to equal a negative 10. So 10 and 1, 5 and 2. But what I know is they have to be opposite signs. This obviously, again, I'm trying to create this minus 3 in the middle. There's no way to do that out of 10 and 1. I can get a 9. I can get a negative 9. I can get 11. I can get negative 11, but there's no way I can get a negative 3. However, with the 5 and the 2, I can get a negative 3. I can't have them both be positive, because then it'd add up to 7. I can't have them both be negative, because then it'd add up to negative 7. However, if I make the 5 negative, now those numbers meet both criteria. They multiply to equal negative 10, and they add up to negative 3. So my 5 is negative, and the 2 is positive. And now it's factored correctly. So really it's the same process. I just have to watch my signs because notice, if I had decided to have the 2 be negative, they'd multiply to equal negative 10. That would be good, but they add up to positive 3, and that's not what's in the middle here. It's a negative 3. So we really just have to watch our signs when we throw a negative in there. So we're going to do some practice, maybe just 2 or 3 of them. So example number 1. We are going to factor x squared minus 5x minus 14. So go ahead and write that down. We have no decisions to make about our first terms. And that's what's nice about this section. When I start throwing a 2 out front, the ball game's going to change a little bit. But for now, I can only lead in x and x. So what I need to do is figure out how can I end and get a minus 14. Well, 14 doesn't have very many factors, so my choice is pretty limited. But 14 and 1 multiplied equal 14. 7 and 2 multiplied equal 14, and that's it. So I need to select the pair that can somehow give me a minus 5. Well, this is obviously out. Also, because this is ending in a negative 14, I know that I need to have one positive and one negative. I just have to be careful who gets to be who. But honestly, the sign of the middle number goes with the larger number. I'm going to repeat that. The sign of the middle, which is negative, goes with the larger number because the negatives need to win out when you combine them. And then I'd run a double check. Do these multiply to equal negative 14? Yes. Do they add up to negative 5? Yes. So what I know is I need to have a minus 7 and a plus 2. And it'd be done. Keep in mind that would be the same thing as if you had written it like this. You can have them in the other order, but make sure the negative goes with the 7 and the positive goes with the 2. And it can always be checked by foiling it. One more. I'll put one up that has a little bit harder factors with it. How about x squared plus 3x minus 54? Now 54 isn't a number that, pops up a whole lot, so you might not be real comfortable with its factors, but you still need to go find them. So 1 and 54, obviously not my winner. Why not? Because I'm trying to get a 3 and there's no way. Does 2 go in there? Yes, it's even. So you might have to take out your calculator and 2 times 27, but that's obviously not your winner. Does 3 go in there? You might have to take out your calculator, but you'll find that 3 actually does go in there. It goes in 18 times. But again, I still can't combine those to get a positive 3. Remember, what I'm trying to do is multiply to equal that 54 and at the same time come up with a 3 when I add them up. So I also know I need to have one positive and one negative because of this sign right here. So I got to keep searching. Does 4 go into 54? Nope. 5? Nope. 6? Yes. 9 times. What that means is I just found my winning pair of numbers because if one of them's negative, I can multiply to equal negative 54 and add up to 3. I just have to decide who gets which sign. But remember what I said, the sign of the middle goes with the larger number because positives need to win out. So that means that I'm going to choose a minus 6 and a positive 9. Do they multiply to equal negative 54? Yes. Do they add up to positive 3? Yes. So now when I unfactor this, or unfoil it, aka factor, I have to lead in x times x. That's the only way to get the x squared. I have to end in a 6 and a 9 to get that 54. I want it to be negative 54. So one of them needs to be negative, and I decided it's going to have to be a minus 6 and a plus 9. And so before we finish, what I'd like you to do is check that by foiling it. Here's my check. Firsts, x times x is x squared. Outsides, x times positive 9 is positive 9x. Insides, minus x times 6 is a minus 6x. And lasts, minus 6 times 9 is a minus 54. Now I'm going to combine that outside and inside, and they give me a positive 3x. And I know I have factored it correctly because that's the exact problem that I started with. So again, you go ahead and show me these notes and I'll decide if they're complete enough. If not, I'll send you back to take some more. If they are, you will be working next on worksheet number 10, which will be like an orangey color. So have a good one. That's it for 19B. You're making progress.